Sidney and Sugarbeets are synonymous to many Montanans. The factory opened its doors less than a decade after the establishment of the town itself. The Sugarbeet factory changed hands over the years until the American Crystal Sugar Company, owned by Western Sugar conglomerate United Sugars Corporation, bought it in 2000. Earlier this year, American Crystal announced the factory would start shutting down on April the 14th. The closing procedures are expected to last until at least September. In our continuing coverage now, Ren Wadsworth traveled to Sidney last week to speak with residents as they reflected on the impacts the factory and its closure has had on them.
The closure of the Sidney Sugarbeet factory is the end of an era to those who have always had it in their lives. Now Sidney residents are reminiscing on what the sugar factory brought to Richland County.
The Sidney Sugarbeet factory stood for 98 years, and while it was in operation, it gave thousands of people stable jobs. But it didn't only impact those who worked inside its walls, but also those who worked on its walls. Robert Rauschendorfer worked as a building contractor around the factory for several years, and he says he owes everything he has now to the work he did on the Sidney Sugars facility back in '85.
The factory was just an opportunity for me to advance in my carpentry skills, provide a lumber yard for the community, and then I had the opportunity to sell my homes in town, and I actually built a 4,000 square foot home inside this building. So it's kind of like a barn dominium style, and I just love it. Just being able to live on this property next to a creek, mature trees, creek running through it. Life is good in Sidney. Life is good.
Even though Rauschendorfer appreciates the positive impact Sidney Sugars has had on his life, he knows the negative impacts for the community as a whole are on the horizon.
The factory provided many opportunities, many jobs. I believe they were the 1 and 2 employer in Richland County for several years. So that's a large impact to our community to have a factory to employ, 200 to 300 people.
One former employee worries for her coworkers who have more history with the factory than her 4-year tenure.
Most of my coworkers, they work there for 15 to 20 years. So that's all they knew. They started working since they were 16, So that's all they knew, and they had a family working over there. So it's really sad for them.
While some people can't speak freely on the massive impact the shutdown will have on Sidney.
It's sad. It's destroying our community, and the farmers, they're putting $1 million in debt. And to the other families that work in the mill that have no place else to go.
And for areas like Richland County that have always relied on their agriculture to fuel their cities, the shift away from Sidney Sugars is uncharted territory.
In my observation, I'm going to go with like 35% of our economy is ag related. And then of course that all trickles down into the community further with a tax base for our schools. The factory is unique to Sidney because it's one of the only production businesses of agriculture within the area. We have a lot of farms and ranches, of course, but we also don't have a terrific means of transporting the products to a facility. Sidney Sugars was where that wasn't such an issue. It was very local. It wasn't such an expense for the farmers. So that's a hit.
Some community members still aren't ready to let the town's major landmark go and hope that the plant can still be put to use in the coming years, even if it's shut its doors to sugar forever. Ren Wadsworth, Nonstop Local.
All right, Ren, thank you very much. We have reached out to American Crystal via phone and email repeatedly over the past couple of months, but the only response we got came from their media spokesperson last month. It reads, "We are too early in the process to have additional comments on plans at the Sidney facility. While we have discontinued producing, we do have maintenance to complete. We have inventory at that location. We'll be packaging and distributing well into September." All right, everybody.